Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Tea and Tequila, the podcast. I'm Steph.
I'm Mela.
And today's topic, we are going to discuss a quote that I wouldn't say it triggered me. It just ignited like thought and conversation between Mela and I. I saw a little reel on Instagram and it said, society wants women out of the house because when a woman doesn't raise her children, the internet, media, and government does. And at first I was like, oh, yeah, that's the truth. Because like the media really just wants us all. But that's why, there's so many of us, podcasting and sharing on social media and trying to just keep ourselves free speech and alive, whatever. That was really incorrect grammar, but you know what I mean. So society wants us all out of the house, though. I sat there for a minute and I just wanted to think about it. They want us all out of the house. It's not just women. This quote's definitely geared towards the women, and it's from an account who supports the women staying at home and the nurture and bringing back the whole housewife thing as a real job and recognizing that, which, yes, absolutely, of course we should, because it's hard as heck. But I kind of stepped back for a second and just looked at that as a whole, and society wants us all working because at the end of the day, we live in a two-parent household for the most part. I mean, for real, how many of us can really sit back and say, like, okay, I get to stay home with my kids? Not many of us. I mean, I'm not even 30 yet, and I don't know many people that can say that. So I think that's definitely a privilege, and it's a privilege to take on that idea. So I don't know. We kind of had like an agreeable take on it, and we kind of disagree with the quote a lot. So I'm going to let Mela dive into the disagreeing, because the agree on the take really isn't much. Like, we agree, yes, society wants us out of the house, but that's not just us, it's all of us. And it's not necessarily the government, it's the media.
Yeah. Because I think, so I'll say this. I think it's two-edged, like a double, I guess, two sides of the same coin kind of thing. Like, I think it's one, I don't appreciate as a woman, like the statement being like, well, women should be in the house, when not every woman wants to be a mom. Now, I guess I do understand, like, in this case, like, she is specifically speaking to mothers, but it almost makes it sound like if you're not a mother, like, you don't apply to the conversation, which, like, isn't really fair. If you're trying to be like, oh, well, women should be in the household, they should do this, they should do that. Like, you should be able to encompass all women in that statement without, like, trying to, like, segregate a part or portion of, like, the actual group of people you're talking about. Because, like, the minute you kind of label it like that, even if people who aren't mothers agree with you, you've already kind of alienated them just the way you phrased it.
Right. So, like, you literally could have easily said society wants parents out of the house.
Yes. Or you could have said mothers specifically, instead of saying women. Because, like, she didn't say mothers, she said women. So, like, the specific use of that word and the way that you phrase that makes it from the beginning antagonistic. And then in the comments, it's funny because, like, in the comments, she's like, well, like, I pretty much was like, I said what I said. And it's like, okay, so that's the point. Like, you wanted this to be an antagonistic statement, even though, like, you were trying to make this, like, kumbaya moment out of it. So, like, are you actually genuine in your, like, what you're saying and in your statement of how, like, oh, well, I'm just trying to look out for mothers, or I'm trying to look out for women, when really you kind of have, like, your own ulterior motive to how you said it and how you kind of put forth the statement. So that's, like, really, like, my underlying basis with the problem with she said. On top of that, it also dismisses, like, fathers the way she phrased it. Like you said, she could have said parents, but she didn't. She didn't say parents. She didn't say mother. She specifically said women. And I think that it's like, it takes away from what fathers bring to the table in raising their children, male or female. And I think that from the beginning, her statement was just from this place of privilege that does not exist for most people. And just because you were able to stay home with your kids because your husband makes enough money for that to be a case, or you're also supplementing that with social media at this point. So it's not like, even if you are a stay-at-home mom, if you're making, you know, even $4,000 a month on social media through Reels, TikTok, or whatever, then you technically have a job. Like, you're not just like getting by on your husband's salary. So like, while you may be in the house, it also means that you're taking time away from your children by doing this, like by having this online social media presence, which is, again, fine. Like, we're literally doing a podcast. Like, I understand that. And like, I totally support women even women, married women, having multiple streams of income, because you never know what can happen. Even it isn't, unless your husband happens to like be a CEO of a company that's established and is making millions of dollars a year. Like, if any one thing happens, you're back to square one, or at least, you know, starting over in some sense. And I think that, especially in an economy that we're in now, to sit there and say, oh, well, like, you know, you need to be in the house, you should be doing this, also demeans the mothers who are completely active in their children's life. Maybe they work night shift. What if they work the whole time the child is like asleep, and they just never sleep? Because there's plenty of parents like that. Like, they're still as involved as you are. They just have an opposite schedule of you.
Yeah.
So,
well,
like,
I mean, I also think it's just like how involved are you really? I mean, when I went through the postpartum depression, there were days that I was completely checked out, even though I was standing right there, and I completely missed everything. And like, after a while, the kids pick up on that, especially the older they get. So if you continue this as a pattern as a parent, then you're not really present, even though you might physically be present. So like, the parents that are sitting here working their butt off and coming home, and they only have 2 hours with their kid, if they're physically present with their kid, you know, listening to their emotions, listening to how their day went, asking to play, what are you interested in today? What do you want to play with? Like, what are you enjoying? Oh, you want to cook? You want to help me cook? Instead of get out of the kitchen, you know what I mean? Like, that makes a big difference. And so I think that it's more about the quality of the time, not so much the amount of the time, you know?
Agreed. And I guess also my biggest, besides the wording that she used, I think my biggest issue is the part where she said that the government is trying to like raise your children. And this is where Steph and I definitely kind of disagreed. Like, one, it seems like she homeschools her children. So like, any, and I can always confirm this later, I guess, like double checking what I'm saying. But if you're homeschooling your children, but you believe that the government is somehow, you know, controlling the narrative, then that means that you're getting this information, like, at this point, like, third hand. Because your children are in these environments that the government would be controlling. You're not putting them in public school. They're not in some kind of like government funded daycare program, or, you know, anything like that. So anything that the government is trying to teach your children will be coming through you. So what are you telling your children? Because I have seen lately, especially with this like rise in social media and everybody being like a social warrior justice one way or the other, like on social media, there's a lot of using people, especially more so on the conservative side, because it's supposed to be more like the family values and like kind of more in line with what the actual platform is. There's a lot more like children being used. And I use the word used lightly because I don't really know what's going on within our household, but there is children being used more so, I guess, as props or as like puppets to further the like conversation they're trying to have. So like, if you, and it's ironic to me because a lot of people who are conservatives are like, well, you got to protect the children. Like there's like, you know, you got to save the children, and we got to make sure that we're pro-life and we're, you know, no abortions and all this. But then you're putting your 3-year-old child on social media with a shirt that says like, you know, something like I can't even think of an example right now, but like, oh, I saw a picture, it was a kid wearing like American flag draped over him and his whole outfit was like American flag like print over it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's getting made fun of in school. And I'm like, you just doubled down on why they were kind of making fun of him.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of it being like, oh, you know, like we address that this is a problem and like maybe this is how you can have these conversations, you're like, okay, well, like they're just being a bully, so why don't you just be a bully back?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying that they have to necessarily agree with you or that that you need people to always be like, I guess, but people need to be cognizant of what they're doing. Like that's the kids, but that even in that example, that wasn't the school telling them that he couldn't do this. That was other students making fun of him.
Mm-hmm.
So like again, that has nothing to do with the government. That's just the kids that you're surrounded with in this
culture. Yeah, it's like your culture.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times there's this narrative that like, oh well, my kid is going to school. Like there was a story that came out a couple years ago that teachers were letting kids believe they were animals, so much so that they put litter boxes in the classroom. It literally never happened, but it became this like media focal point that like literally didn't exist.
Oh,
which is why I say it's not the government that's really like brainwashing or training it to be a thing. It is the media, because and my boyfriend has told me this a couple of times, but like in the 80s/90s, there was like satanic panic, they pretty much called it, where parents thought that their kids were being like, I can remember the full details. That like the kids were pretty much being like, what do you call it? When you like, not possessed, but like given as an offering to the devil.
Oh, sacrificed.
Yes, sacrificed. And that like you couldn't let anybody babysit your kids because everybody was like touched by the devil, and that like yes, but it was mostly in daycare. It's like, oh, like all the people at the daycares are like, you know, just like sacrificing your children. This is also at the height of like D&D, like Dungeons and Dragons, which is very like,
okay, now I see where they got the whole plot from, like Riverdale. You remember?
Yeah, well, Riverdale's an Archie comic, but yeah, more like but Stranger Things.
But they did the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing in it.
Yeah, well, because it's also like established, like not mythology, but like
fairy tale
like
stuff.
Lore. Yeah,
folklore.
Yeah, like with the werewolves and all that. Like Dungeons and Dragons kind of just like made it more like 80s, 90s popular, to the point now that it's still popular because it kind of just like updated it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so like there's this whole generation of people. This is also the generation that like was eating lead based like paint. So like they all just thought that, you know, like the devil was getting into them, and that like because even my boyfriend said like there's been examples where he was growing up where his parents were like, oh, you can't watch this or you can't watch that because it's like not necessarily not Christian, but just like it just has undertones to it that we're not comfortable with. And then I know even like for me, like I read Harry Potter when I was younger, and I mean, first of all, if you've ever read Harry Potter, it's not very like demonic, at least not till the end, where there's like literally flying headless people in the sky.
I mean, it's still not even that bad.
But I was reading like the first one or the second one, and my dad is a minister, so we were in church, and I was reading because what else do you do in church? But and my grandmother got mad that I was reading like Harry Potter in church and said that it was like demonic, and I was like, first of all, he's a witch, not a demon. Second of all, like it's not even, the first book is more about him like going to school and finding out who he is, and less about like the magical, like mystical, like underside to it. So it's just,
either way, it's not that bad.
Exactly. But like it's the same, like I feel like people focus so much, especially now with like after COVID, like there's been everything that happens in the government now is a conspiracy. And I'm not saying that there are not shady things that happen in the government. I will never be the person that says that. Like, I have studied American history enough to know that there's definitely things that have happened that just do not, like, 1 and 1 is not equaling 2 in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have like seen the government work long enough to know that there's not this concentrated effort to like destroy the foundation of like childhood or kids or education or anything like that. Like, they don't have the time. They can't even agree on what that would look like within like each party. So there's not enough cohesion for that to be a thing, especially not with the way in which our government works. Also, like, even if everyone tomorrow came together and was like, we are going to ban all the books, it would still take years for that to actually play out. Like, there's just that belief that like, oh, they implement a change and then it immediately affects me. That's not how government works. That's literally not how any of it works. So like, I think there's this misunderstanding of how, like, the people who are proponing for these things, there's a misunderstanding of exactly how everything plays out. Like, mass media can get to you before the government has even like opened a session of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it takes, all you got to do is film the commercial, or even now, like, commercials are 30 seconds or less. I can put it on YouTube. I can put it on TV. I can put it on a podcast. I can put it on Instagram. I can put it on Facebook. That's 5 different touches right there. And that's before you probably even leave the house for the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet you're thinking that like big bad government is coming to get you and that they're like turning your children into cats or something. Like, teachers don't even have time to teach the stuff they're required to teach. Like, and I guess this also is just coming from someone who's actually been in a classroom. Like, there, at least the school I was in, no one's talking about religion, sexuality. Trans wasn't really a thing then, but transgender or like parents being gay or like single parents or whatever it is, like, that wasn't discussed. Like, it was, can you tell time? Do you know how to complete a sentence? Do you know what a complete sentence is? Like, that kind of like actual educationally based things. And like, I think that people have gotten so caught up in like what the education system isn't, that they're not focusing on what it actually is. And like, if you really want to change education, then run for your school boards. Actually put yourself in the position to understand what exactly is going on in these schools. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, I like, especially with like critical race theory being a big thing recently. Most people don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
Like, most people just hear the word, I'll get the exact definition. Most people just hear critical race theory and automatically think that it's something that like is woke, which most people don't even know what woke is, that something is woke and that it's against what they stand for, and that it's like the Democrats trying to turn their children into like gay pirates or something. I don't even know. Like, it's like the most weird like moment in history where like if it's not exactly in line with what you believe or what you think, then it's immediately against you and it's immediately trying to get you onto the other side.
Right.
Without actually like any critical thought happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're all very easily persuaded in different directions. Yes. There's so many smooth talkers in each party, as far as, you know, trying to pull you onto their side, that it's easy to feel confused and then get frustrated.
Okay, so according to Wikipedia, scholars of CRT say that race is not biologically grounded and natural. Rather, it is a socially constructed category used to oppress and exploit people of color, and that racism is not an aberration, but a normalized feature of American society. Which I have to say is the truth. Like, and it's not even just Black people, it's across the board. Like, oh, well,
you feel like it's American, or you feel like it's other countries?
it's a global thing. No, it's definitely global.
Yeah.
But in this specific instance, they are focusing more on like the racial constructs within American society.
Right.
And I think whenever you have a society based off of one group being seen as less than from the beginning, I mean, even if we go back, I'm not even talking about just like Black people in slavery. I mean, like Native Americans, the people we literally kicked off of their own land and said,
hey, this is America, this is our land now. Yeah, like, okay.
Like, from the beginning, you thought that, oh, because these people had a darker skin tone than me, I'm better than you. Or like, oh, well, these people aren't educated in the same way.
Right. They're less industrialized.
Yeah, they're less than me. Even though I literally came over here on a boat and just said this and just took everything. So, and it's like, it's this very, and it's only recently that it's become more and more of a thing. And it's interesting to me that we're going so backwards at the moment. Like we're like as a country and as our understanding of race and how we are as people is regressing so much. And it's like alarming because why a lot of people who are like, oh, well, no CRT or think that you don't need to discuss race because race is not a problem. Which that's fine to say in theory, but not in practice. Because what you really mean is, as I don't care about race because it doesn't affect me. Even if they are racist, they're like, it doesn't matter to them because that doesn't affect them. They don't, oh, well, I don't have to deal with these people. I don't have to deal with Mexican people or Hispanic people or people who, or even like people from Africa, actual African Americans. Like, oh, I don't have to deal with those people. Like I never interact with those people. Thus it is not an issue. And thus it does not matter. Whereas you're trying to teach kids at this point that like, well, slavery wasn't that bad. And some people wanted it. And that, they were treated very nice. And, look, they had like, I remember somebody recently was saying that they went and visited a plantation and they had rebuilt all of the slave quarters to make it look like they had these nice wooden shacks and that they had floors and all this other things when like there are little oral histories that have been written down for years, for generations at this point that say like, that's not how it happened. I mean, Thomas Jefferson literally has like, not hundreds, but has family members who are the direct lineage of a slave that he raped for years. Like it's a known fact. Like if the founding father of this country, one of the founding fathers of this country that you hold in such esteem was literally raping and impregnating one of his slaves, what's to say that the people who were poor and didn't actually have that much money and weren't as successful or as educated or as understanding weren't doing things that were even worse. Like there's stories of people being killed. There's lynchings. There's like, you're literally beating people with leather instruments. Like you can't just say that it wasn't a race thing. Like the people that you were doing it to were a different race.
Yeah. I mean, then there was the formulation of the KKK.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
like if you have a whole, and there's multiple, and even on the other side with like the Black Panther Party, you literally created task force to go after people that were associated with it when really all they were trying to do was get Black people educated. In a sense, it was like, here's what your rights are. Here's what to happen if the police show up. Here's how to, open a bank account. Here's how to be a citizen in a society that isn't necessarily set up for you or your success. I mean, they literally there was a Black Wall Street in Tulsa, and now the Department of Education in Oklahoma wants to act like it wasn't a race thing. And they want to just act like the Tulsa massacre did not happen. Like you can't just like act like things didn't happen. You can't act like people did not die.
Well, to be honest with you, I think where a lot of people are coming from, at least like when I say like, oh, the government is trying to control like our kids in the sense in the schools is that lack of like the public schools. And yes, you stated like that's not such like a big government. That's more of a state government thing. But like, I do feel like a lot of times the schools aren't teaching stuff. Like they're not teaching, you know, like you just said, they're not teaching the truth. And yeah, it's hard for you to measure private schools and Catholic schools and those types of schools that, you know, aren't federally or stately ran, but like at the end of the day, what like I feel like a lot of the public schools are still kind of pulling back and not teaching as much of the truth. And I think that that's kind of where that idea comes from, is like, well, why are you trying to hide it? Maybe it's not so much excuse me, maybe it's not so much like trying to groom into any type of agenda as much as it is, why are you trying to hide the truth? You know what I mean? um Moving forward.
I think because the truth makes people uncomfortable. And I think that's for everything. I think people feel like, well, if I never teach you that, like, you know, there was slavery and slavery was bad, then you never grow up this idea that a white person could subjugate a black person. Or if I never teach you that there were Japanese internment camps in World War II while we were literally fighting the Nazis who were interring Jewish people, then it means that we never did anything wrong to another group of people. You know, like, if I never say that, like, especially now as a country where we're like, oh, you know, we got to build a wall, we got to have to close the borders, when literally everyone in this country came over on not everyone, most of the people in this country came over on a boat and were able to get in this country with little to no, like, effort and or skill to add to their name. Like, oh, I'm a butcher, okay, then you can come in. Whereas now, if you want to become a citizen of this country, you got to be like a doctor or an engineer, or you have to be fleeing from, like, you know, criminal prosecution or something. Like, you have to have, or I guess not criminal, but like prosecution in terms of like where you're living in like a war-torn country, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you
like
can't just
situation.
Yeah. Like, you can't just become a US citizen. And on top of that, it takes like 7 years. In 7 years, people could be dead. Their whole families could be dead. Like, and then yet you're like, oh, well, you got to do it the right way. Well, what exactly is the right way? Because all of you literally landed here, got off a boat, and then had a house in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
You had a place, like, there was things set up to help you become a citizen. Because
what they wanted was to just get all the people over here and to create society over here. Now we're like, oh shoot, we created this free world, and it's in, like, everyone's coming in, and we don't have any. Well, we feel like we don't have any room, and they're panicking now. It's like, well, you can't set the precedent and then just not follow through.
Exactly. And like, we've created such a weird dichotomy and a weird, just like, broken system that really the answer is to just redo the whole thing. Like, immigration needs to be more of a streamlined process. Getting from the border and a checkpoint into this country as an immigrant or as someone who's, you know, like a refugee, however it is, needs to be something that is more streamlined. Like, we cannot have mothers, babies, families sitting in like disgusting squalor for months to years on end because the court system is so backed up, because it's taking them a year just to get a hearing whether or not they can even stay in the country. Like, even the people who do it right get punished for doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point, but the thing is, it's still better than staying where they are. And that's the thing I think people don't understand, is if you're willing to sit in a cell for a year rather than go home to the only place you really have ever lived, then that's how bad it is. And we as a country have never experienced anything that bad.
Mm-hmm.
We've never, ever, even after 9/11, that wasn't even one part of the whole, like, of New York City. We're talking about whole countries just being war-torn war zones. Mm-hmm. And we get upset when, like, it's not even what, a 1/100th of the actual country. And I'm not saying that like 9/11 wasn't a tragedy, not even remotely.
No, but to put it into
But
perspective,
to put it
like,
into
imagine
perspective,
that being every city, like, all the time.
like people in California weren't, while they still were affected by it, they weren't waking up with the sound of a crashing building next to them,
Exactly.
or like, you know, the rubble spewing out and literally blanketing them in smoke for miles. Like, it's just interesting how we feel as if Americans are so much better, but yet we don't actually portray ourselves as better when it comes to the helping of other people. We're supposed to be like a country of humanitarianism and a country of being, you know, open to helping others. But now it's just like, well, what are you doing for me? What have you done for me lately? What am I getting out of this? And it's like, well, when we like, what do you mean? What are you getting out of it? You're building a relationship so that, God forbid, the next time there's another world war and we get bombed, we actually have people who care about it. Like, because what happens if, like, what happens if Russia all of a sudden decides they're going to attack us? And everybody else is like, oh, well, you know what? You didn't help us do this. You didn't help us do that. You kind of just left us like looking like idiots. You're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of land between here and Russia that's something like, if they are all against us, that's not gonna work. Like, you need allies, and in order to have allies, you have to actually be out like an ally to somebody. You have to be a friend to other people. And I'm not saying that it should just be some free for all. Like there should be standards and rules and regulations, but they have to make sense. They can't be punitive. Like, you can't just put something on the books and then be surprised that it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. And that's like from the macro down to like from macro to micro. Like, even going back to what we're really just saying, originally saying with this statement, like, you started this whole conversation about women being in the house and, you know, women being strong mothers and strong maternal figures, all being antagonistic, like, and being kind of like divisive in it. And instead of it really turning into a conversation of, wow, you know, that makes sense, or, you know, I never thought of it like that, it just turned into like, what are you talking about? Like, that's a privileged statement to make when you have to have both of the partners working, or that's really privileged that you say that when, you know, I don't have a choice because my partner died, or you know, whatever,
or just simply like, I want to work, and
yeah,
like, I have a passion that I want to have as a business, or also idea like, I want to work and my husband has the privilege to stay home and he's great with the kids, so why not? Like, it's just to try to, like, that's like almost like what we were talking about, like, as far as like she's being like almost like an anti-feminist, right? Because it almost sounds as though she's like trying to tell everybody that like that we've been brainwashed into thinking we should work. Like, no, we have not. One, a lot of us want to work. Two, a lot of us have to work. Most of us have to work. And I mean, that's it. One and two. I just feel like, yeah, I mean, it is, though it may have been posted with a good intention to kind of help the people who want that life feel supported, I kind of feel like it just negatively demeans every other type of woman.
yes.
And I think that, and honestly, every different type of man, because, you know, some of them are just so much better staying home and keeping the houses clean than we are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very like one way. Like, we want to sit here and we want to stop all like the sexist stuff and all the this and all of that, but then you hear statements like that are a little aggressive.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. And like, to just to just, and I just think that like my biggest thing with it is just the idea that like you have to be home all the time in order to be present. Like that just really, really gets me. Because I think that there's the times that I do, like, I'm taking time right now to do this with you, and I'm like filling my cup, doing something for me that I've been wanting to practice doing. And Rowan's in there playing. The other two are out. But guess what? When I go back in there to go get Rowan, I'm gonna like actually enjoy having time with him now. Cause like I feel like, okay, I just did my own thing. I'm not a robot mom. That's just a slave essentially to the house and the family. Because that's what you feel like if you don't do things. A lot of like women don't want to stay home because you do. You become a slave.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's ridiculous. And like I realized pretty quickly when I found myself walking around the house being like, God, I feel like a freaking slave, like blah blah blah. I was like, okay, something's got to change. I'm sitting here muttering to myself that I feel like a slave. This is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of just jumped into this, even though the timing of everything is so intense with like trying to move and do all of that. But like, fuck it. Like I need to just do me, because otherwise I don't think I would have the actual energy to be the mom, be the person that's trying to stay in charge and in control as far as moving and like just doing all of those types of things. I wouldn't be charged.
Yeah.
And to sit there and say like, oh, your kids are going to be so affected by the world. Well, like, okay, first off, you have to expose them to media, because when they're done living in your bubble, they're going to go out into the world and it's going to be like a crash course of all things that you didn't want them to see and know and learn. And guess what? Everything that you don't want them to be exposed to, they're going to expose themselves to, because they're going to be curious.
Yeah.
And the longer you wait to expose them, the more curious they are.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when they start to go off and make new friends and meet new types of people and connect that way. They're going to be like, oh, well, you know, maybe they grew up racist. They go to school in Chicago and they go, oh, wow, look at all these black people in my class. Why? They're so nice. Oh, now all my friends are black. Why did my parents like say all this stuff? Why like was my grandma so like concerned? I don't get it. Then they get confused. Then they have to start making their own opinions. So they're going to form their own opinions regardless of what you think you teach them. So like it's not so much a matter of like, you know, hiding them from the government and the media and not exposing them to the truth of our history and our cultures and all this stuff. It's a matter of just allowing like helping them navigate it in the small ways that are comfortable to you. Mm-hmm. So like if you're uncomfortable with something, that's something you need to check yourself with before you can try to teach your kid about it. So like if you're not comfortable with trans people or gay parents, get on board, figure out how to feel about it, to navigate that and help teach your child that. Like don't just sit there and just shut it out completely or ignore it or say that those people aren't that and just shut it out. Like that's not gonna do anything. They're gonna find it out themselves, especially with the fact that I mean my 3-year-old can practically use my phone already. Like I mean he's not even 3. I mean and he can practically use my phone already. So like they know. And they're capable.
And like I said, like you can control what your child is being exposed to a certain extent. There's obviously thing like if you're in the grocery store, you can't control the fact that there's, you know, a trans person or a gay couple or a lesbian couple or whatever, black people, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to but at the same time, if you're going to the grocery store, all of these things should have been conversations already, because these are already things that exist in your immediate worldview. And I think part of it is a lot of racism, sexism, misogynism, It's not a word.
I said
Misogyny.
earlier, like a word that was not correct. I was like, oh God, that's embarrassing.
But whatever it may be, like a lot of it is just rooted in ignorance. Like you just either haven't educated yourself or you haven't examined some of the thoughts and practices that just don't seem to align with what's actually going on. And that's on you. But you then make it a more of an us problem when you have children and continue to create that same perpetuate those thoughts and create that same type of environment. And especially like you said, because sooner or later your child has to leave. Like either you pass away or they decide to go to college, depending on like, what the situation is. But the world does not care. Like they're not going to sit there and cater to your negativity or your just prejudice.
Not gonna be catered to you.
Like
I had to, I'm sorry.
People have their own problems they'll deal with, and like having to take on yours is just normally not part of their plan. So like if you grow up in a very closeted, closed-minded community, and then like you said, you move to Chicago, nobody in Chicago is gonna feel bad for you. They're gonna be okay, well, now you're no longer in Kansas anymore, so you're gonna have to figure it out, Toto. Like welcome to the real world. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that that's wrong or that's like incorrect. And it's one thing if people mess up every now and again, it's like something that they just don't know. Then yeah, like, hey, that's not something you should say, or maybe that's not something you should do. But don't sit here and like expect people to like teach you how to be a well-rounded adult. Like that's kind of up to you. And I think that's really kind of where we are. It's like everybody wants something to be done for them, and nobody wants to do anything for themselves anymore.
Preach.
Like you got it. Like if you want to make a change, you got to do it yourself. Like, and even if that change is within your own tiny environment, that's better than what you're dealing. That's better than no change at all.
I know. I feel like everyone like rallies together and they're all like, let's make a change. And then they stop and look around. And they're like, who's going to do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an individual thing.
The bystander effect is very real. Like it's just the more that an individual contributes, obviously the better, but an individual should not be the only one contributing. Like we have got to get past this whole me thing and focus a lot more on a we and us thing, considering that we all live on the one giant floating rock in the middle of space. Like there's nowhere else to go. I'm like, this is it. So you got to make it work. Like,
yeah.
Unless somebody somehow figures out how to get to Mars and make that habitable in the next 10 years, which doubt. Highly doubt.
I'm not going to Mars. I watched that freaking movie with Mark Wahlberg.
It's what's his name? Matt Damon. But yeah.
Are you sure?
I mean, are you talking about The Martian?
Yeah, you're right. It is Matt Damon. I used to always confuse those two. Sorry, guys.
Which is very funny because it's more likely to confuse Matt Damon and Ben Affleck than it is.
Never. No.
Well, because Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, except for the fact that they're literally always in movies together.
They're always in movies together, which is why you don't confuse them. And they look nothing alike.
I also don't think
Matt Damon and Mark Wahlberg have a very similar vibe.
Not at all.
Yeah, they do.
Not at all.
Yeah, they do.
Ironically, though, all three of them are from Boston. So
yeah.
They got that going for them.
Ben Affleck's like taller than everybody. So you can't confuse them.
I think Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are kind of close to height.
Really? I'm about to Google it.
I'm about to Google it too. Let's see. Ben Affleck. Let's say he's like, I'm going to say he's 6'4". Oh, wow. 6'2.25". So he's 6'2". And Matt Damon is 5'10".
Yeah, so there's a significant difference.
It's like, yeah. 5 inches.
Significant difference. Well, like I said, I love when I'm right and Mila's not.
Whatever.
Well, this was a good chat of all the things.
Yeah, we definitely ended on who's taller, Matt Damon or Ben Affleck. Just a little nonsensical to kind of bring it back down.
Yeah. I feel like that was good. That definitely took a field that I wasn't ready for, but it's good.
Yeah, definitely went. I definitely had a little bit of a tirade. Oh well, whatever. So yeah, I guess this has been another episode of Tea and Tequila.
I love it. I'll call you next week.
Bye.
Bye.